Hi everybody, this is Steve Manser and this is part 4 of our tutorial series on rental agreements. In this tutorial we'll cover approval flows. Before we get into actually using Roller today, I wanted to go through a quick review of the rental agreement states. I know we've seen these in previous tutorials, but we haven't really focused on the process flow, and that's what I want to do here. This table shows all the states that a rental agreement can be in. Let's quickly go through them. First, we have application being completed. That's pretty straightforward. We're just filling in the basic information. Once that's done, we move into the pending first approval state. Now, the intent with this phase is to validate the data that's been entered. So you may want to run background checks or do any number of checks on the data that you've been provided. Once that's completed, the first approver can accept or decline. If the first approver declines, they'll supply a reason and the rental agreement will be terminated. If they approve, we'll move on to the second approval. This is a sort of backup or double check. If it doesn't make sense in your business, you don't have to use it. And as we'll see in this tutorial, there are only a couple of steps that Roller absolutely requires you go through. Okay, so if the second approver declines, they'll have to select a reason why it was declined, and then the rental agreement will be terminated. Assuming they approve, the rental agreement will move on to state number 4, which is make active/execute. Now this state is where your payers would actually sign the rental agreement and you would transfer possession of the rentable item, whatever it is. That might mean that you give them keys, do a walkthrough of the apartment with them. It's the handoff time. It's where the user takes possession of the rentables. Okay, so that's what state 4 means for new rental agreements. For existing rental agreements that you've just amended, this is the point where you execute those amendments in order to make them active. State 5 is the active state. It is the state that your rental agreement will be in 99% of the time. It means that assessments are active, payers are actively being assessed rent charges, and they're paying their rent. State 6 is notice to move, which is just a slight variant of active. It means exactly the same thing as active, except that the payers have given notice of their intent to move on some date. And state 7 is the terminated state. It means that the rental agreement is no longer active, and there will always be an accompanying reason to indicate why it was terminated. A couple of final points on this before we jump into the program. States 1 through 4 apply only to reference number versions of a rental agreement. And recall that a reference number version is one that's in a temporary holding area. It's not active. None of the assessments are being assessed against the payers or anything. It's just in a holding area. States 5 and 6 means that assessments are active and payers are actively being charged for the rental items. Okay, final point. Every business is going to have a slightly different process flow. If any of these states don't make sense in your process flow, you can probably just skip them. All right, we are ready to get started. I have a database here with one rental agreement in it. We have an edited version of it, so let's bring that up. And the next thing is let's go straight to the actions area because that's where we control the states. In the previous tutorials, we've always used the Get Approval button at the bottom to get us into state 2. But here you can select any state that you want that's available. So let's set it to first approval. And then update, and then whoa, surprise, we got kicked out of the actions area and we got thrown into our data screen. So what's going on? Now if you look up at the top, you'll see there's a red dot under payer/users. And I just wanted to show you that this is something that might happen to you. In this case, I submitted a change for the state, but there was a data problem. And it wants us to fix data errors, known data errors, before we go off and try to validate the data manually. So let's go in and have a look and see what's going on here. Let's click on that person. Okay, so the issue here is we've got an invalid email address. Not a big deal. I'll just put in something that will work here, and let's save that and try again. Okay, it fixed the data problem. Let's get approvals now. And with the data problem fixed, we are successful in moving into pending first approval. Now in this case, let's decline the first approval. And we see that it's now asking us for a reason. And here are some common reasons. You can update this list with other reasons that may make sense for your business. Let me just choose one of them here. Update this. Okay, and now you can see that actually two things have happened. First, the approver declined, and we've noted that and noted the reason why they declined. And the second thing is that the rental agreement has been moved to the terminated state. There's no sense in going any further if one of the approvers declined. Now you can see down here that the two steps have been captured. You can see here that the first approver declined. It shows who, when, and why they declined. Then you can see that it skips all the other states and it goes straight to terminated, and it lists that it was terminated, and the reason why is because the application was declined. Okay, now let's do something else. Suppose that the reason that was listed here, for whatever reason, poor credit history, let's suppose that that was just a mistake and that really their credit history is okay. So I can change the state back to set to first approval. And note that that wipes out the terminated state below, as well as the fact that I declined. So in effect, we're just resetting this flow back to the first approver. And since the credit was okay, let's go ahead and approve that, and now we move to the second approver. Again, let's assume that the second approver declines. They also have to set a reason. And again, you can see that it moved it to the terminated state and kept the reason why the second approver declined. And again, let's just assume that there was no poor employment history and we just want to reset back to the second approver. So we go here, select second approver, update the action, and we reset the flow again back to the second approver. You can update that and approve it. Now this is where you would set the date for when you want the move-in to occur. If it's an amendment, this is the date that you would want to execute that amendment. We'll just set it here on the 20th and hit update. Now remember, up until this point, everything that we've done has been in the temporary holding area. It's been in a reference number version. As soon as we make this active, it becomes a real active rental agreement in the system. The assessments begin to accrue and so forth. And you can see here that the new rental agreement picks up on the day after the old rental agreement stops. Okay, now let's update this rental agreement. Let's assume that the person has called in and said they're giving us their notice that they're going to leave. So we can change the state here to reflect that. If they give us the date they're going to move out, we can add it. If not, it's no problem. You could just leave it blank and come back and update it later. So let's actually do that now. We can go back here and set it to the same state. Receive notice to move. Now we can just fill in the date here. You can see that it updates and saves the date, and also you can see it down at the bottom. It just updates the state and saves the move date. Now let's assume that they call you back and say, hey, I've decided not to move, I'm going to stay. So you can actually set this back to the active mode. And again, note that when we do that, we reset the notice to move state. It's no longer in there. And one other scenario to go through here. Let's suppose that for some reason you decide you need to terminate their rental agreement, that there's some problem or some issue with the person and you just want to terminate their rental agreement. You could jump straight to terminate, select the reason. Again, these are updatable reasons. Now we've supplied a lot of reasons here, but your business may require some additional reasons, so this list is updatable. Now when we jump directly to terminate, you'll notice that there is no status here for receive notice to move. That's okay. Another thing you should all be clear on is that any change to the data in the rental agreement, anything, no matter how minor, any change will cause it to go through the approval flow again. And as an example here, let's do something that's totally innocuous, like changing the pet weight. Now notice that we're not in the edit mode, so we can't make any changes here. We have to edit it, then we can bring it up and make the change. And we'll change it here from 43 to 35 pounds. Now remember, this change is going to the reference number version. And remember, reference number versions are temporary holding area. And in order to make it stick, we're going to have to go through the approval flow. And for an innocuous little change like this, that might be overkill to go through 2 approvers. So what you can do instead is jump straight down to just execute this thing. So we'll do that. Now, again, take a look down here at the bottom. You can see that we've skipped all the approvers, and we've skipped ready for move-in, and we've gone straight to active. I just wanted to show that this is possible to do. And every business will have its own policies on how to deal with situations like this. If it's okay to jump straight to active, you can do it. If you need to go through the approval flow, you can do that as well. So that's pretty much it on the approval flow. To summarize everything, states 1 through 4, you're always going to be in that reference number version. That's the temporary holding area. And in order to move out of the temporary holding area and into an active rental agreement, Roller will always validate the data that it's given. And if there's any problems with the data, in other words, like invalid email address, which we saw in the tutorial here, or any other problems, required fields missing or things like that, any of those kind of issues, you won't be able to get it into the active mode. You're going to have to fix all of those data issues in order to get it into the active mode. And once it's in the active mode, we begin to assess charges to the payers for all the rentable items. A Roller is pretty flexible about letting you jump from one state to another. Just remember that as we move from a higher state number to a lower state number, we reset the status information associated with the higher state numbers. So for example, if you reset the state from active to pending first approval, the move-in or execute date will be reset, the second approver's decision will be reset, and the first approver's decision will be reset. All right, that's it for approval flows. Thanks for checking it out. And as always, leave me questions and comments below, and I will do my best to accommodate.